Good morning, y'all. Today, we're going to talk about reparations. This is a really interesting issue. And the reason I want to talk about it is because my position has changed, shockingly. Not because I changed my mind on what's right or what's wrong. Not because I changed my understanding of politics, but because I changed my understanding of words and their definitions. So this was actually a big issue that kept coming up when I was running for president. Everyone wanted to know, what am I going to do for reparations? And having hung out with a lot of libertarians, my answer was always no. But I understand that the consequences of slavery are still real and they're still here today. And I know a lot of people say, no, that's not true. I even know black people who, I don't know if they were necessarily descendants of slaves. Grandparents, great-grandparents, I don't know. Not every black person in the U.S. came from slaves. But even they say, oh, there's no such thing as white privilege, there's no such thing as this inherited, I don't know what you would call it, what's the opposite of a privilege for being black. They deny that this exists. And I would say, no, I think it does exist. But, and I'll get to reparations in a minute. So this kept coming up. People kept asking me, what do we do about reparations? And it was at one point when I realized what I was saying was, when I was answering these questions, was, look, let me say this first. I had a conversation with this one guy who was some sort of scholar at a university, and he was going on to say his entire plan of $70 trillion of money that would be acquired by the United States leasing out their land and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And ultimately what it came down to is free money. And it was basically a UBI. It was something that would not be paid out all at once, but it was something that would be paid out over time, month to month. Now, while I recognized, what he was trying to do was he was trying to solve a very real problem, his economics didn't really work out right. And I asked him several questions and poked several holes in it, and he kind of had to scramble and come up with some new explanation that I could tell he had never explained before. So he was, even just talking to me, he was filling in some gaps. And I want to actually follow up that conversation now and see where he's at and see if anything I said changed his position. But, so back to the point about reparations. So, if reparations means giving out money, then I'm absolutely against it, because another dead animal on the highway. I understand that that's not economically feasible. You can literally destroy the economy by trying to do that, and it might not actually solve anything. But if a reparation is not giving out money, if a reparation is just fixing a problem, and somebody in the comments on another post that I made talked about restitution, specifically restitution for all of the money that's been stolen from him by the government. Now, when we talk about reparation is restitution of sorts. It's a term that was created specifically for restitution over slavery, but it's restitution. It's figuring out a way to solve a problem that somebody created and making them pay for the damage that they created. And of course, there's a lot of problems with that. The people who owned slaves are not alive today. Some of the people alive today may have inherited some of the property or some of the money that was acquired through the benefit of slavery. But you're going to have a hard time tracing a lot of that back on paper. So, you can't just run around to every wealthy person today and say, that's all from slavery. You need to know who actually got what. But if you consider that reparation is to repair a situation, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with reparations. We can't do it by printing out money, because that's just not right for anybody. And it's interesting that my entire position on this originally, even when I was against reparations, because in my mind I had only connected that with giving out free money, or 40 acres and a mule, which is completely debunked. So I debunked the 40 acres and a mule because mules are sterile animals. You cannot breed them. It's, I think it's a cross between a donkey and a horse. And they're sterile. You cannot breed them. So had anybody been given a mule, back when that 40 acres and a mule thing was a thing, the mules would all be dead, and there would be nothing left to show for it. Why not 40 acres and a horse? Why not 40 acres and a donkey? 40 acres and a mule. Wow, that's a fucking slap in the face. And the 40 acres. Well, in the time that has lapsed since the 40 acres thing was a thing, property tax, even at 1% per year, would have taxed away the entire 40 acres. So again, you'd have nothing left, and those quote-unquote reparations would have just been a slap in the face. So, what is there? And I want to go back to this point about, people not believing that this is true. Not believing that there's some, historical generational disparity between descendants of slaves and everybody else. I make really good money. I never went to college. Well, I went to community college for a little bit, and I snuck into a few classes at USC, but I didn't learn anything in my current industry where I make money as a software engineer. I'm self-taught, but I think that interest only came about because when I was a kid, my dad got a computer, and I learned to program when I was probably 10 or less, younger. Now, he wouldn't have bought that computer if he wasn't working at one of the big aerospace companies in LA, where I grew up. He wouldn't have been working at one of those big aerospace companies in LA if he didn't go to an engineering college in the 60s. The chances that he would have gone to an engineering college in the 60s, had he not been white, had his parents, my grandparents, not had a lot of money saved up because they were able to own businesses. I don't know the exact history there. I know I should. I'm a terrible person. But had that not all been there, had my grandparents been slaves, or my great-grandparents been slaves, and not had that intergenerational head start, I would probably not have what I have today. And I recognize that. And so I don't want to push white guilt on anybody. I don't want to say oh yeah, you should feel guilty. That wasn't my fault. I had nothing to do with that. But at the same time, I have responsibility. And Remember, responsibility is not obligation. Responsibility is an ability to respond, an ability to do something. Because I have this great job, because I'm able to make good money, and because I have this knowledge that I've acquired, and my interest in fixing things, I have an ability to respond to the current situation and figure out solutions. So, going back to reparations, and how do we solve these problems? What really is the problem? I would say the problem is poverty, which is the fundamental foundation of survival. And, they make up these arbitrary numbers. Oh, if you make less than, such and such per year, you're in poverty. That's kind of bullshit. Because the numbers they give for poverty, if you make that much money, if you have that much money, and if you can keep and spend that much money without interference from the government, you've actually got all of your survival needs covered. The problem is, no matter how little you make, the government is still taking from you in the form of property tax, and if you're renting, you're paying the property tax, sales tax, Social Security tax. If you're paying into that, don't expect to get anything back. They're taking and taking and taking and taking. And so when we talk about reparations, the first thing everyone always wants to do is what can you give us to make our lives better? And this is the same thing, Joe Biden's pushing his Medicare for all and his UBI. I believe. I know it's Bernie Sanders' thing, and Andrew Yang's thing, but I think he's also adopted this now. It's kind of the Democratic platform now. They're pushing these things. Oh, and Joe Biden wants to help minorities open their businesses before white people. Something like that. And there's always this let's give, let's give, let's give. And there's never the question or the position of let's stop taking first. I mean, think about how stupid this is. Every single day, somebody comes up to you with a gun and takes money. Says, give me your wallet. And then he says, look, I understand you're living a life of poverty. I'm going to give you some money. And he gives you a little bit of money back. Why does he keep robbing you? Why does he keep taking from you? Why? I mean, is he giving you more than he has taken? No. Now, I talked about reparations and restitution from, this guy complained about restitution from all the money the IRS stole from him. The IRS has stolen a lot from me and the California Franchise Tax Board. Tens of thousands of dollars. I don't want reparations or restitution for that. Because I know if I were to try to take that money from them, they don't have that money. They're all flat ass fucking broke. And that if I were to get that money from them, all they would do is steal it from somebody else. And I don't want that. I don't want reparations. I don't want restitution for what's been taken from me. All I want is for them to stop stealing from me and everybody else. I think if everybody came to that conclusion, we'd start getting a lot further ahead. Because look at poverty. Why are people in poverty? They don't own any land. They don't have any savings. They are absolutely dependent on jobs. Jobs, jobs, jobs. If you don't have a job, you're going to die. Ask the Native Americans. Before Europeans came, and I don't want to make this a race thing, I want to make it about civilization. Before the Europeans came and colonized, did they have jobs? Were they like, oh my God, this economy, I can't find a job in this economy? No. And I'm not saying they had the perfect economic system or that everyone should participate in a system exactly like theirs, but they weren't dependent on jobs. Jobs are not a force of nature that we all must have. Jobs are a creation of man. Dependency on jobs is a creation of man. And this is all enforced through taxation. Through taking. They take so much from us that we have nothing left. Literally. Would you rather have nice, smooth roads to drive on? I dropped there for a second. Would you rather have nice, smooth roads to drive on, which most people don't even have? They're full of potholes and bumps. Or would you rather have enough money in your savings account to get by for a year or two if the economy ever shut down over a coronavirus? Which really means more to you? Especially considering the fact that when the economy shuts down and they tell you you got to stay in your house, you're not really driving anywhere anyway. You're not really using those roads. Which would you prefer? They need to stop stealing. We should all have savings. We should all have property. Inheritance is another one. And they say, oh yeah, we need an inheritance tax. People should not receive intergenerational wealth. Going back to the 40 acres and a mule thing, what would happen if somebody who was a slave received 40 acres and then they died and wanted to pass that to their children? Nope, sorry. There's a tax. You either have to sell the land or come up with a bunch of money. They're always taking. That's all they're doing. That's why there's so much poverty in this country. And you can look to so many other countries and see that there are people who don't make a whole lot of money, who make a fraction of what the poorest people in the United States make, and yet they have so much more. They have property that they own. They don't have to worry about the government coming and kicking them out of their homes. They have a supply of food, whether it's from their neighborhood or their community, or whether they have some livestock and some crops on their land, or live where food grows naturally and is easily accessible. They have so much more than Americans have, and they make so much less. How's that possible? Because their government is not taxing the crap out of them. That's it. So, what's the solution for reparations? I may not have a complete answer at this point, but I know for an absolute fact the very first thing that we have to stop doing is stealing from people. Don't make this about, oh, well, if they stop stealing from poor people, they're going to stop stealing from rich people, and they should still steal from rich people because they have more to give away. They're not going to miss it. No. Stealing is wrong. We have to make no exception, because no matter what, when they're stealing from everybody. It's the super elite, ultra wealthy who are writing the rules in the first place. They're making loopholes for themselves. That's why we hear about all those loopholes. We have to stop stealing. As a society, we have to understand that that's absolutely wrong. And once we do that, then we can address some of these other problems. But that alone is going to fix so many problems. I guarantee you. And that's one of the things we need to do first. All right, guys, I've ranted long enough. Taxation stuff. Don't forget, tune in tonight. I'm going to have Tommy Chong on the show. It's going to be awesome.